Today I'll be presenting an in-depth analysis on Farrokhzad's poem Sin. So I wanted to title this poem, this presentation, I Sinned, Therefore I Am, which basically really emphasizes how at a time when women in Iran were expected to be quiet about sexuality and desire, she's basically able to do this, do the opposite thing in this poem. Farrokhzad doesn't really ask for forgiveness. Rather, she claims her experience out loud, and in doing that, she turns a private moment into a very powerful act of self-expression. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you guys how she basically blends religious and sacred texts with personal and taboo experiences. So to understand this, we sort of have to go through the historical context of Iran. So in 1953, Iran went through a huge political shift. CIA-backed coup removed the current prime minister, and brought in the Shah into power. The Shah promised modernization, but it was really a top-down and very controlled operation. Yes, things like schools and infrastructure expanded, but freedom, especially for women, was still very, very limited. So then in 1957, Farrokhzad, who was already controversial for being divorced and sort of cast as this very unholy person after losing custody of her children, published this collection of poetry, called an album, if you will, Ihsan, which basically means rebellion. Her poem Sin directly defied what society expected from women. And what's amazing is that in 1960, when women were sort of fighting for their own rights and rebelling by themselves in Iran, they were actually citing their poem in their reform movements. So her poem about something that private actually became something that was very, very political. So looking at this from a scholarly lens, we can see that scholars like Hamid Dabashi argue that Farrokhzad completely shifts the focus of Persian poetry. Traditionally, Persian poetry focused on abstract ideas, things like nationalism, spirituality, or male-centered views of love. But Farrokhzad is basically able to bring it back to the body, to the female experience, and to personal truth. Milani, another really famous poet, has a really powerful phrase about this. Veil with words to unveil the self. That's what she describes women doing in Iran. In other words, women often didn't have the chance and the opportunity to speak freely and speak raw. So they had to use metaphors and symbols to talk about things that they weren't allowed to. And Farrokhzad does this very beautifully in this poem. Kamran Talatov also sees this collection of poetry, Ihsan, as both a literary and a sexual rebellion. It's not just about breaking social rules, it's about breaking poetic rules too. She uses free verse and avoids classical forms, which had long kept women on the sideline and outside. So another concept in this poem is the power of I. One of the most powerful things about sin is about how it uses the word I. In the first few lines we hear, I sinned, I opened my body, I quenched my thirst. And each of these statements is very direct, very active, and very personal. There's no hesitation, no shame. It's kind of just laid out there, right? And Ashraf Zahidi basically uh, refers to this when he says that the naked eye isn't hiding behind symbols. It's claiming your voice fully, which is what the author is doing here. And the poem's form as this, as mentioned before, it writes in free word verse, and there's no strict rhythm for rhythm sort of feel to it. The lines are also uneven, almost like someone's speaking spontaneously and not controlling too much, not trying too hard, right? And this breaks away from the classical Persian poetry that again was keeping women out for quite a while. Another really important sort of concept here is the fusion between erotic and sacred texts. So Farrokhzad describes her experience in spiritual terms. For example, she writes about the Temple of Trembling and uses words like prayer and worship to talk about physical intimacy. And this is very important because in society, in Iranian society, religion was often used as a way to control women's behaviors. But here, Farrokhzad flips down her side. She kind of just goes like, what if the sacred isn't outside of us, right? What if it's actually inside our bodies? Ahmed Karimi Hakak says that she eroticizes the lexicon of faith, which basically means that she takes holy words and uses that to sort of describe desire, which is something that's really never been done before, right? And this challenges the idea that only clerics or religious leaders get to define what's really virtuous. So next, we're going to talk about the symbolism of fire in the poem Sin, right? So fire is obviously central to Iranian culture, as is Zoroastrianism. So the speaker describes the embrace as warm as fire and says her body is blazed. In Islamic tradition, fire is often a punishment. It's referred to hell. but in the much older religion, Zoroastrianism, it's actually sort of tied along with purification. So the author here is really able to mix those ideas together. She's saying that what if sin doesn't actually destroy you? What if it actually puts you through that blaze, that fire, the same way that pottery go through that blaze and come out the other side, much more beautiful and well formed. So Kamran says that she turns chasticity into a kind of creative energy, kind of like fire. The poem suggests that through desire, the so-called sin, the speaker kind of becomes more herself. The fire is able to remove the outside shells and all the personas that she's putting on, and she's able to basically express herself fully, even in a society like Iran. So next, we're going to talk about the significance of Farrokhzad's work, right? So the first thing that she does is that she's really able to expose hypocrisy of modernity. So her poem serves as a critique of the gap between the state's portrayal of modernity, what they, try to portray out to the West, and what it actually was. Women still didn't have sort of the rights that men had, and this highlights the dissonance between the public narratives and the private realities. Um, Another thing that she really talks about here, and that's significant, is that she's able to reclaim female agency. She's kind of able to take away the power from the patriarchal society that she lives in and bring it back to herself, right? And this articulation of desires and experiences was often suppressed back then for women. She also was able to link gender with national identity. So in her poem, she suggests that the liberation of women is essential to the broader narrative of Iran's modern identity, and that Iran will never be truly free and never really join the Western countries at their level if they're not able to essentially free women from the patriarchal society that they were living in at that time. So the last but the most important question that she kind of leaves us off with is like who really defines virtue, right? Because if you think about it, um, like at what level does virtue and sin get judged? Is it the government? Is it Allah, God? Is it the clerics? Is it the culture? Or is it actually the individual, the person who dares to speak honestly about what they feel, right? And the poem is basically able to do this and pushes back against the idea that morality is something handed down from above, something that we have to follow. And this matters a lot now, not just in 1957. Around the world, we're still debating things like dress code, reproductive rights, and queer love. They're all battles over who controls the body and who controls the narrative. So her final question, Farrokhzad's final question to us is that, will we let shame, judgment, and silence define us? Or will we, like her speaker, step into the fire and come out the other side, more polished, more honest, more human, and more free? And this is a choice that gets put in front of us after we read this poem. And it's a question that we're still answering to this very day, which is something I find very beautiful and very significant. Yeah, so thank you for watching my video. And here is sort of the works cited. Everybody that I've mentioned throughout this presentation is here. And if you guys are more interested in the works cited or whatnot, it will be in the docs where my script is present.